expression of that eternity that God has placed in our hearts, because God refuses to let us just drift off into the darkness of oblivion to reap a fate that frankly we richly deserve. The fact that we still long for what we lost is proof positive that our Creator has not abandoned us, and He plans to restore us completely. It's proof that God's heart also aches over the condition of our world, because He feels the disconnect just as profoundly as you do, and then some. And God is determined to do something about it, to do something to redeem you. I mean, if that wasn't true, then our hearts would just turn to stone and we would all stop caring as the lights just slowly went out.
Well, the thought of reasonable thinking in my brain, the light of that just went out just listening to what this gentleman was saying. But this is one of the reasons why so many of us deconstruct from Christianity. The self-loathing and contradictions within Christianity is so prevalent within this religion that you can't help but to feel sorry for people who are still stuck in this religion. I want you to think about what this gentleman just said. The first thing he's saying is that this identification with God, this longing and love for God, this connection with this God is in our hearts, built into our hearts. But yet, at no time frame in the history of man have there been the majority of people believing in this God. As a matter of fact, in all time frames of the existence of man that we have recorded, that we can know about, that we can identify their culture and whatnot, the overwhelming majority has always disagreed with this God, belief in this God, have never accepted this God. For tens of thousands of years, 100,000s of years, people in the Americas never identified with this God. The people of Africa never identified with this God. The people of Europe never identified with this God. India, Asia never identified with this God for an unknowable amount of time. They identify with their own gods that they created, their own gods that was relative to them, not the God of your Bible. It is only through persecution, through war, through conquest that your God has become one of the major religions in the world, but still is not the majority. It is still not believed by the majority of people. Therefore, this idea of this God putting in our hearts a yearning for him is the worst plan in conceivable history, because if that was the case, everybody would have developed a worship of this God that was the same. But people develop different worships of different gods that are vastly different from this God. There's no way you're going to say that Odin and this God are similar. No. Odamare, Brahma, they're not similar to this God. It's distinctively different. Ra, distinctively different from this God. Zeus, distinctively different from this God. So no, this God did not place this longing in our heart, this knowledge of himself in our heart. The other aspect of it is the self-loathing, the belief that you are not worthy. This is an ideal that people take into their mindsets where they believe that they are not worthy for the beauties of life, the love of life, the greatness of life. And that if there is an afterlife, that without paying some type of penance or without some type of worship, that you don't deserve that life. You look at the scale of your life and you see that the overwhelming majority of your life, you have been a good person. You abide by the laws. You abide by your own morality. You stood up for your morality. You stood up for other people. You raised good kids. You were a loving spouse, a loving brother, sister, uncle, nephew, cousin, aunt, all those things. And yet you go to church every Sunday, or you go to mosque, or wherever you go, and you're told that you're not worthy. That you are only worthy based on a belief in a God that had to have a human sacrifice of himself to forgive you for the sin that he himself created. Logical thought goes out the window when you consider that. And then there is this idea that is put forward in this video, that you have this longing for this God, and because you miss what you had before. I challenge anyone, prove that you existed before. Prove it. We can believe in reincarnation all we want. We can believe that we existed in the Plamora or as spirits beings, and we are trying to return to the Plamora, trying to return to this place of grace with this God. You can believe those things all you like. And to a certain degree, some of that is comforting. But proof is the problem. There is absolutely no proof that you existed before you exist right now. There is absolutely no proof that your consciousness was fully who you are, that you were, and who you are now. You were that person in the past. There's zero proof or evidence of that. Maybe your consciousness is a collection of multiple consciousness that dispersed after other people had died, and then they coalesced together inside your parents and then became you. Or it's the consciousness that has been passed down from generation to generation through the DNA. But you cannot demonstrate that you were you in any other time frame in history, ever, even before there was an earth. You cannot prove that. Because as much as people like to talk about reincarnation, who were you, what were you before the earth had formed? Before the earth became livable to human beings, who were you, what were you? Were you a meteorite? Were you a nebula? What the hell were you? What conscious level did you exist in? Were you in a different dimension? You have no proof of these things. We like to theorize and contemplate these things, but we have no proof of these things. And yes, I myself have said that based on the Hermetic understanding, the Hermetic laws, that there must be other levels of consciousness, since we can demonstrate other levels of consciousness on Earth. But what we cannot demonstrate as far as other levels of consciousness is that you are you in any of those consciousness states. If you were at an atomic state or the plant state or the animal state, you did not have the consciousness to identify yourself as you now in this matter plane, in the human state. There's no proof that you go beyond this and you become something of a greater conscious state. There's just no proof of it. It may exist, but it's a maybe, a possibility. It's a might. It's a theory. In the same vein that this heaven that this God creates is a, well, that's just a fairy tale. At least mine have some basis in science, where that one has zero. And then the last thing, Christians will often say that man doesn't know the mind of God, man doesn't know the heart of God. But yet, when it's something that sounds good, when it's something that plays well to people, to Christianity, that keeps you inside the church, that causes you to give that tithe, to make you loyal to a church or a pastor, all of a sudden they know God's heart. God has a longing for you. God misses you. God is controlled by a lot of emotions that makes him very human. And if God can be controlled by emotions, then therefore he is not God. God must be outside of emotional pushes in order for him to do something or be something. And God does this out of all this love. Have you read your Bible? Do you not see that if you don't obey this God to the letter of the law, then you will be punished. You will be put into slavery. You will be swallowed by the earth. You will be flooded by the waters. You will be burned. You'll be turned into salt. There are so many punishments that people throughout this Bible receive because they were disobedient to this God. Not that they were bad people, just disobedient to this God. You could be the best person up, but you're disobedient to this God. So hellfire, brimstone, salt, water, all other types of destruction and slavery, conquering, all these other things happen because of your disobedience to this loving God. If your God is moved by emotions, your God is not God. Your God is a human or some other human-like being that is ruled by emotions, as many and most people are. So that type of preaching sounds good to people who believe in it, but it's all a prison, and that's all it is. And this is why you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.